Violence or abuse in a teen dating relationship is more common than people think. It happens in every kind of relationship, and it happens in every single community. And it's a topic that people often just don't want to talk too much about. We're uncomfortable a little sometimes talking about that, but it's really necessary.
We obviously sometimes see the end result of a teen dating relationship that has been marked by violence, and we see the tragic consequences of that sometimes. We are frequently called upon to intervene in circumstances short of the tragic, but where the violence has gotten escalated to a point where the police and the courts are involved. And what we really were aiming for was to get information out to kids so that they could look at their own relationships and probably almost more importantly be looking and talking with their friends about the information. Because what we know is that even though 1 in 10 teenagers in a relationship is experiencing some kind of violence directed at them by their partner, even fewer, about a third of those kids tell anyone, and they usually tell a friend, much more than they ever tell law enforcement or even parents or other adults.
When you endure abuse at the hands of somebody who's supposed to care about you, especially over a long period of time, it doesn't just physically damage you, it damages who you are. It damages your spirit, it damages your self-esteem. And that, when it happens in a teen relationship, is also happening at a time when you're starting to have your first romantic relationships. And it's difficult to navigate all the emotions you might be feeling about that in a good situation. And when you layer on top of that being frightened about your own safety, or realizing that somebody that you care about, because it's not always a bad relationship, right? No one would start having a relationship with somebody if they knew in the beginning that they were going to turn out to be a person who was abusive. And even relationships that are very, very abusive usually aren't abusive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's some good times. And people try to convince themselves during the good times it won't happen again, it will be better, I'm going to fix this. And then they repeat that cycle. And that's really something people need to know about, and be looking out for your friends as well. Because sometimes when you're in a relationship, it's really hard to see it yourself. And it's your friends who see that something's going on.
We reached out to a lot of our schools. You know, we spend a fair amount of time out in the schools doing programs, whether it's about distracted driving or internet safety or social host liability. So we reached out to guidance counselors and principals in those schools to ask them if they had some kids who'd be willing to do that. And got a great response from schools that send kids. We did it on Friday afternoons after school and sports. The kids came here to our office. We provided some pizza, and we sat around and talked with them. And it was just, as I said, it was just an interesting social dynamic of watching. It was a pretty good-sized group of kids. Most schools sent 3 or 4 kids, so the kids primarily were strangers to each other, and the way they were able to connect. And then when we got to the creative piece, the way they were able to bounce ideas off each other and put the app together.
And we also hope that by looking at this app and talking about it, you will get more comfortable talking to each other about it. Because we know that of teenagers who find themselves in a relationship that is abusive, no matter how severe that abuse is, only 1/3 of those teenagers ever tell anybody about what happens. And that's why sometimes there are those terrible consequences, because people have been keeping it inside, not sharing it with anybody, and the violence is escalating. And we also know, what I'm sure every teenager in this room knows, kids are often more likely to tell their friends about something than they are to tell an adult. And kids who spend a lot of time with their friends are more likely to notice something than an adult might be.
When I got the call about this event and learned about the app, I was so excited and so honored to be included. And it's especially exciting for me as someone who 17 years ago sat on a teen task force that was thinking about how to educate our peers about teen dating violence. And I joined that task force and I got involved in the work that I do still today because of my own experience with dating violence and realizing that if I had had the knowledge and the language to tell anybody about what was going on, I would have been safer and my friends would have been able to support me in ways that none of us felt equipped to do. So when I started to learn about models of peer education, I got really excited about the idea of young people being able to educate young people, because you all know, as Marian said, so much more about what's going on in each other's lives than adults do. And it was really important to us at the time to create tools that would be tangible things that people could take with them and be able to utilize to recognize signs of abuse and know how to support a friend if they became concerned about them. But all these years later, it's so important that these tools still exist, but that these tools continue to evolve, because the way our lives and relationships look continue to evolve. The tools we created back then would not be relevant right now. And so I'm so impressed and excited as I learn about the work of this teen task force to think about how important it is to meet young people where they're at. As we mentioned, you all have a window to each other's lives that many of us don't. You see what's happening in the hallways at school, you see what's happening at parties or when you're spending time with friends, but most importantly, you also see what's happening on social media. And that may be where you become concerned about a friend or a friend's relationship. And so to have a tool that you can also access through social media, through an app, is so much better equipped to support you in that moment and know where to turn for support, where to turn for information. And again, I just can't say enough how important it is that this was created by young people for young people.
The way the app is designed is the first screen presents a scenario. And they are scenarios that we anticipate and have seen that kids recognize, really because they were given to us by kids from their own schools or their own relationships. So it tells us, Billy and Susan are in a relationship. Something's happening. This is what either one of them is experiencing and telling you, or what you observe about it. And then it asks some questions at the end of it. Whatever answer you click on for those questions, you get to the next screen, which, first of all, the kids really emphasize to us that no one scrolls through their screen. So whatever information you were giving them had to be short enough to come up on the screen. And no matter what your answer is, whether it's the answer we hope that you would have, this is a good thing or this is not a healthy thing, you get good information. So it doesn't just come up and say your answer is incorrect. It says, you thought this was healthy, but what about the fact that this is a lot of control, that sort of thing. It encourages kids, especially when it's talking about things they might observe, to think about having a conversation with a parent, for instance, about what's a reasonable expectation. One of the things that's important about the scenarios that kids see, it is in a circumstance where the app tells them this is bad. This is a bad relationship. It just asks questions and lets them take a moment to look at what's happening and think in their own head. Is it a good idea if you tell a partner, I need to study for 2 hours, I'm turning my phone off, and when you turn your phone back on, you have 60 texts and phone calls in 2 hours? Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. And, life goes fast for all of us, and people don't always take a moment to stop and think about that.